I'd like to touch on why I believe the Democratic Party has a very strong position within the Black community. Now, this is for my Caucasian fellow citizens. It's merely my view, and there are many other perspectives on this. I don't know much, but I've learned some as a member of the NAACP. The NAACP is a National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. It was founded in 1909, and for younger people, colored people was a word then to basically refer to the Black community. So a more modern expression might be the National Association for the Advancement of Black Citizens. I've been a delegate to the last 3 national conventions in Atlantic City, in Boston, in Las Vegas this past summer, a pretty hot convention in July. And I do see a difference between the politics of the leadership of the NAACP, which I apply more generally across our country, to those of the actual voting delegates. Many fruitful conversations have been had there, as well as at my local Stamford NAACP in Stamford, Connecticut. When we had this last election in 2024, they say that 8% of Black women voted for Trump and 20% of Black men voted for Trump. An improvement, but it is way away from anything one would actually crow about. And it is my position that this longstanding alliance is in fact damaging. If we go back to 2015, we consider something I call the Chicago tragedy, which is the daily violent death of young Black men, boys, and bystanders nationwide. In 2015, in Chicago, young men ages 15 and 19, 49% of their deaths were as a result of homicide. For ages 20 to 24, that was 49.7%. Now, to try and find the data today, it's very hard to look in the data. It seems they bury it. You can't use the same title from 2015. Maybe the administrative state doesn't want us to know it, to see it. The abortion rate in the Black community is very high. It's 5 times the rate for Black women versus white women. States like California, New York, Texas, Florida, Illinois do not give specific data on race, but if it's extrapolated out from other states, you end up with approximately 1,000 abortions per day, 360,000 Black children aborted every year. Then we also have the wealth gap, where Blacks have only 1/8 the net worth of whites in this country. If I told you they had half, that's obviously a problem. 1/8 is absolutely brutal. And that's something that we as a country have to work on, and there are ways to get there. There's actually only 3 ways into the middle class: a job, running your own business, and saving money. Government check's not going to get you there, and a lawsuit's not going to get you there. Education, you need more school choice, higher labor force participation, which is a route to a better life. Free lunch society is not the way, but patronizing white progressives and their allies promote the giveaways, a form of a handout versus a hand up. In this last election, when Vice President candidate Kamala Harris was said, you're not doing as well among young Black men as you might, came out with a program suggesting somehow getting involved in the marijuana business, which is the altered state business, and cryptocurrency. I don't think that either of those were too relevant, and maybe they're stereotypical, perhaps. Democrats do not win without the Black vote. White progressives can't win without the Black vote. Their allies make sure that Blacks who do not support the DNC, that's the Democratic National Committee, do not rise into leadership positions within the community. And while the rank and file may be more conservative than the leadership on more wanting school choice in the form of public charter schools, in the form of educational savings account, where the rank and file do support by a wide margin the use of government-issued photo ID in order to vote. The traditional relationship of mother, father, son, and daughter has strong support, and yet politically we're supposed to steer away from that or not discuss it. Secure neighborhoods are important. Defund the police was not a good idea from the get-go. And it's about jobs. Generally, as a Black citizen, if you want to get involved in the political system to ameliorate the social contract, what choices do you have? The Republican Party does not exist in traditional Black communities. So you're left with rising the Democratic Party. But again, if you don't support the politics of the DNC, which is controlled by white Democrats, you're going to be squashed. You're going to have your grants, your funding removed. You'll be deplatformed. You will not be given interviews. You will not be given exposés. And you'll certainly be primary by those who do support the rule of the DNC. A good example was Mayor Richard Irvin of Aurora, Illinois. In 2022, he wanted to run as for the GOP slot to run against their Governor Pritzker. And outside Democrat groups got involved in running attack ads against him in the GOP primary to make it unlikely that he could prevail and be the Republican candidate, because he would have been a very strong candidate. And as governor of Illinois, then he would draw attention, which is something the DNC cannot have. I would think that Democrats would be more circumspect in their squelching of leadership people within the black community. There have been centuries of abuse of blacks by white Democrats. The Democratic Party of Andrew Jackson was a party of the slave power starting in 1828. They fought for and advocated the expanse of slavery. Democrats seceded from the Union. In December 1860, they attacked Fort Sumter in Charleston in 1861, beginning the Civil War. Over 700,000 Union and Confederate soldiers died in that Civil War. The Democrats of the South opposed Reconstruction, opposed after the Civil War. They opposed the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery. They opposed the 14th Amendment, extending the privileges and immunities of our federal Constitution and applied it to the states. They opposed the 15th Amendment of the right to vote. Some Democrats founded the Ku Klux Klan, who intimidated, denying them their civil rights. More Democrats voted against or abstained from passing the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, as opposed to Republicans. These Democrats also founded the Jim Crow Separate but Equal in education and public services. They opposed federal anti-lynching legislation. The GOP carried federal anti-lynching legislation in their platform after 1922 and beyond, but the Democrats kept it out of their platform, including the party of FDR, year in and year out. Republicans voted a much higher percentage to pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act at around 80%. How can we get out of poverty? Jobs, running your own business, and saving money. But saving money is not realistic when you can't even think about paying next month's bills when you can't pay this month's bills. So if we go to the U.S. Census Bureau data, which is in the back of my 100 questions book, you will find in the black families, where it's all families, 54% were below the poverty line, and single families headed by women were 70% below the poverty line. By 1970, that had declined down to 32% for all black families and 58% for single families. By 1980, we hadn't made much more progress after the imposition of the Great Society programs in the late 60s, which discouraged workforce participation. 1980, all households were still 31% below poverty line, and single-parent families at 53%. We saw a very slow decline in poverty rates thereafter. It only picked up in 1996 after the passage of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act by the Clinton presidency and the Republican Congress. So in 1996, poverty for all families had declined to 27.6%, and for single woman-headed households down to 46%. By 2001, it was down to 21% for all families and 37% for single-family households. It's been a slow slog, but we're not allowed to talk about it. We can't call out the war on family from the Great Society programs. And under the Great Society programs, you could not have a mother and a father in the same house to get maximum government benefits. So what do? Well, in the name of fighting fraud, they go in to a house to see, is a black father living under the same roof as his children? And if so, benefits will be reduced. As if you find a man's sneaker, away with the benefits. What's happened is a two-parent family, not only in the black community, but in poor white communities, have been decimated. And with that comes poverty and the isms of poverty. And then we have the Chicago tragedy, which again is the daily violent death of young black men, boys, and bystanders nationwide. We're not allowed to talk about it. Under the Chicago tragedy in 2015 in Chicago, 2 men were dying a day. 2 men, but we can't talk about it. We can't ask, well, who are the shooters, who are the targets under the Chicago tragedy of these young black men? We can't ask, did they go to Catholic school? Because they didn't. The target also didn't go to Catholic school, where they might learn concepts of humility, compassion, forgiveness, redemption, and love as an alternate course to the resorting to violence. The daily violent death that we see in Chicago has value to the white Democrats at the DNC. They use it to talk about gun violence. They don't talk about why it's happening. We cannot talk about the outsized impact of abortion in the black community. The DNC pushes full on for abortion, and you wonder, is there any limit in the third trimester? We have Planned Parenthood, founded by Margaret Sanger, a eugenist, who wanted to control reproduction of certain groups as not desirable, and she included blacks in her mission. That's why about 75% of Planned Parenthood facilities are located within walking distance of minority communities. But we're not allowed to discuss this disparate impact. This is also discussed in my book, the 100 Questions book, in Chapter 2. We have an abortion rate that runs at about 1,000 children per day, black children per day. That's 360,000 per year. We have out-of-control illegal immigration under the DNC of the Biden administration that has stressed the finances of local communities. It has diverted resources from the black community. And yes, we should be kind to our fellow man, but immigration should follow the rules that have been set up. When blacks have 1/8 the net worth of whites in America, we have not acquitted ourselves in this realm. Where do these ideas come from? What's with these open borders? Why can't we talk about family? Well, some of the ideas that are promoted by the DNC come from our universities and their Marxist professors. And some of those are inspired by Marx's manifesto from 1848. And I could just quickly take a little quick quote from page 17 of my copy, where the bourgeois family, which is mother, father, son, and daughter, will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish. And then as regards borders, they say the working man has no country. That's why we have this concept of international Marxism. But we can't discuss that. The black community could be broken down to three general groups. One, we have the descendants of slavery here in America. Then we have immigrants from the Caribbean. And then we have post-1965 immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa. It's a very diverse community. Here, I think we could shine a light on education. We in America have more money than Caribbean nations. We have more money, stereotypically, than sub-Saharan nations. We spend a lot more on our education. And yet we do so much worse in the education of our children than is done in majority black communities in the Caribbean and in Africa, because they do not intentionally go out of their way to screw over the education of black citizens. But our public teachers unions do just that to maintain their power, and the DNC is right there with them, because they cannot take a step without the approval of our public teachers unions, the NEA, the AFT, the $10 billion faction that was warned against in our Federalist Papers. You cannot promote school choice as a leader in the black community, because the teachers unions and the DNC will come after you. They will set upon the person, they will engage in name calling, they will deplatform them, they will withdraw awards, they will withdraw grants, and they'll primary the person. White Democrats cannot afford for the black community to support any other party than the Democratic Party. And so the pain will continue. This is the pain for the black community, tethered to the Democratic Party. We can do so much better. Thank you.